Good evening and welcome. Tonight I have a super special treat for you. We're going to be reading this book, In the Forest with the Elephants, by Roland Smith and Michael J. Schmidt. The elephants. Elephants are my favorite animal in the wide world. I have lots of favorite animals, like I love snakes, I love sharks, I love cats, but I love penguins, I love otters, but elephants are above all of them, honestly. I love elephants. And it's mainly because I spent a lot of time with elephants as a child. I had friends who were elephants. Once you spend time with them, you learn that they pretty much have human levels of intelligence. They're so incredibly smart, and so incredibly charming. I got to know some famous elephants. Like one of my friends was Margie, who had a starring role in Star Wars: A New Hope back in the 70s. I got to know her in her older age, but my best elephant friend was named Malika. She was an African bull elephant, and she pretty much had the elephant version of gluten intolerance. So she was very small. She had a very special diet, and her growth was stunted. And I remember at one point we were the same height. I was a tall kid. I was like 5 foot when I was 10, so maybe it was about 7 or 8. We were the same height, and she would be able to slip through the fence and run around the zoo. At one point, when I was like, Malika, what are you doing? And I got her by the tusk, because I could like reach down and grab her tusk perfectly. She was that small, and I walked her back to her back, and the trainers were like running after her frantically, and I was just like, come on, Malika, let's go. You're good friends. She passed away a few years ago, probably due to complications from her illness. She died so young. It's really sad, but yeah, I always had a close bond with the elephants. Malika also was in the movies. She had a voiceover role in Jurassic Park. She was the T-Rex. So that's my girl when you watch Jurassic Park. But yeah, elephants are very near and dear to my heart. This is Topple, by the way. It was named that because the shelf he sits on, I don't know why, I always put him in a good spot, but he always falls off when I'm like getting something off of that shelf, no matter what I do. So this is Topple. This elephant doesn't have a name. So if you want to name this cute little elephant, feel free to do so in the comments. Also, I think she's an Asian elephant. You can tell because the ears. African elephants have big, flappy Dumbo ears, and they all grow tusks. And the Asian elephants have little, flappy ears, little flaps. And the females don't grow tusks, so you can see in the picture here, these are of course Asian elephants because we're in Myanmar. This is a male bull, a female, and a baby. I remember when Malika was a baby. She was so cute. She's a super cute baby. We were around the same age. She was born like 2 years after me, so like we were mentally the same age. But yeah, I'll never forget Malika. But let's get started. I'm gonna link a really cool video I watched about this topic, the timber elephants of Myanmar. But this is a book version of that video. So I do recommend you watch it after you watch this, because you're definitely going to want to know more and see the elephants in action. That's where Myanmar is located. Now, the sad part is that, like I mentioned in my last Myanmar video, the government has been cutting down on logging to the deforestation, so it's actually an issue right now in 2020, because they have like hundreds of elephants that are out of work. But we're not going to worry about that. We're going to learn about this logging tradition that's existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. A forest partnership. Like this, so you can see the elephants. It's so fun to ride on an elephant. It's very, very lumpy. You go side to side and like up and down at the same time. Plus they're really coarse. Their skin is really, really rough and dry, and they're really hairy. Like you can't tell from looking at them, but they're covered in like thick hair. It's like when you haven't shaved for a while and your hair is all coarse and rough. It feels like that all over the whole elephant. But yeah, if you've never ridden an elephant, it's the best. But anyway, and they're really smelly too. But getting off topic, they smell like the closest I've smelled since being away from the elephants is like a horse stable. It's probably just the hay and manure smell that I'm picking up on, but that's like the closest scent to elephant that I've found since then. But let's read. I'm getting off topic. I love elephants, you guys. Let's get top one frame. There we go. A forest partnership. You can tell I'm excited. A century ago, there were more than 100,000 elephants living in the forests of Asia, but as the needs and demands of our increasing human population have grown, most of the forests have been cut down or damaged, and elephant numbers have declined sharply. Now there are only 35,000 Asian elephants left, and they are considered to be an endangered species. 10,000 Asian elephants, nearly one-third of all those remaining, live in the relatively small country of Myanmar, once known as Burma in Southeast Asia. Though Myanmar is only about the size of Texas, 5,000 wild elephants roam its forests and herds as they have for thousands of years. 5,000 more, known as timber elephants, continue to live in the forests, but work there with humans to extract valuable hardwoods, including teak, which are sold around the world. The Myanmar Forest is thick with trees, vines, shrubs, orchids, and bamboo. Much of the year it is a pleasant place in which to live and work. Days are warm and sunny, and nights are cool. But during the hot, dry season, from February through April, the dust seems to hang in the air. Rivers shrink to trickles, and the hardwood trees stand tall and bare. Brittle leaves crunch underfoot, and when the wind blows, the leaves rattle, sounding like rainfall. By contrast, during the monsoon season, from May to October, it rains daily. The forest air is damp and heavy. Water drips from every leaf and vine. It flows down the steep hillsides and valleys, transforming the dry riverbeds into rushing highways for floating logs. The Asian elephant is the only endangered species that has a working partnership with humans. In the end, this partnership may be the key to saving these elephants from extinction. It may also be the key to saving the forest where both Myanmar's wild Asian elephants and the timber elephants make their home. The elephants of Myanmar. See their footprints. Big old stompy footprints. You see their little toenails too. Little toenails. They're big toenails. 2 cow elephants have left the herd and are moving quietly away beneath the green forest canopy. The 40-year-old Winsan will soon give birth to her 4th calf. She is with her best friend Pegu. Winsan has left the early labor pains. Winsan has felt the early labor pains since morning, and Pegu's been staying close to her. Winsan has felt the early labor pains since morning, and Pegu's been staying close to her. Pegu has given birth to 3 of her own calves, and she's well aware that Winsan's time is near. When cows like Pegu accompany pregnant elephants, they are called aunties. Each auntie shows great concern for her friend and will help protect the defenseless calf as soon as it is born. Elephants probably evolved this auntie system as a protection against tigers. One cow elephant alone might not be able to prevent a hungry tiger from carrying off and devouring a newborn calf, but 2 elephants are more than a match for even the most determined tiger. How cute. Winsan and Pegu move farther into the forest, feeding as they go. The labor pains are sharper now, and Winsan becomes restless. Her belly contracts as the calf within her moves into position for delivery. The contractions continue. Finally, a small bulge appears beneath her tail. The calf is in the birth canal. During the next half hour, the contractions intensify. Winsan is very active. She lies down and gets back up again several times, trying to ease her discomfort. The bulge beneath her tail is large now. Winsan bellows. With a final belly tightening push, the big bulge moves down the birth canal and the calf is born, falling with a splash onto the forest floor. There. I wish we could get that part. Pegu touches the baby with her trunk as Winsan turns around. Both cows sniff and gently prod the calf as it struggles to get up. It's a male weighing more than 250 pounds. The calving took about an hour, and in less than half that time the calf is standing. He's 3 feet tall, just tall enough to reach up beneath his mother and find a teat for nursing. He will feed every 2 hours on her rich milk, drinking 1 or 2 quarts at a time, gaining a pound per day. If Winsan and Pegu were wild elephants, the 2 cows would rejoin the wild herd in a day or so, but they are timber elephants. The men who ride the timber elephants in Myanmar are called Oozies. Mongmin, Winsan's Oozie, sits inside his hut with a group of other Oozies and rolls the dice. 9. He wins again. As the others grumble at Mongmin's round of good luck, he gathers up his winnings. We've been playing all night and the sun is rising, Mongmin says, finished with the dice. But it's our day off. Still, he says, I need to check on Winsan. I have a hunch that she's had her calf. The other Oozies laugh. A fool's errand, one says. Who can tell when a cow will calve? All the same, Mongmin replies, and waves goodbye to his fellow Oozies. He's been expecting Winsan to calve any day now. When he set her free in the forest yesterday afternoon, she seemed a bit uneasy. Her friend Pegu was staying close by her, which convinced Mongmin that the birth was near. Mongmin finds Winsan's tracks and follows them. As the path leads him deeper into the forest, he becomes more sure that his hunch is correct. He knows that elephants always find a secluded place in which to give birth. It takes him more than 2 hours to find the elephants, all 3 of them. Mongmin is pleased. The newborn calf is up and nursing. The cows rumble and alarm and turn to face him with a surprising quickness. He speaks to them soothingly, and they settle down when they see it is an Oozie, not a tiger. Mongmin wants up to Winsan. As he gives her a friendly pat, her calf comes right up to him and pulls on Mongmin's arm with his stumpy little trunk. Mongmin laughs. You're a bold one. He takes a good look at the calf. The little bull is well formed and active. He'll make a fine addition to the timber camp. After about an hour, Mongmin starts back to camp to get his young grandson, Wanlin. He has promised Wanlin that he would show him the calf as soon as it was born. Back in the village, Mongmin tells his family the exciting news. He barely has time to gulp down a cup of tea before his grandson tugs him back into the forest. When they reach the elephants, Wanlin is amazed by the miniature calf. What will you call it? The boy asks his grandfather. Mongmin thinks of a game the night before. There we go. Patting the little elephant rump. I'll call him Tolai, he says. Dice King. Can I be Tolai's Oozie, grandfather? If you study hard and become skillful, you may well be Tolai's Oozie one day, Mongmin replies. In Myanmar, half of the timber elephant population is owned by Myanmar Timber Enterprise, or MTE, which is operated by the Myanmar government. The other half is owned privately, and those elephants work in the forests under contract to MTE. In the past, elephants became timber workers in one of 2 ways. They were either captured in the wild, or they were born to a timber elephant cow in a logging camp. Because their numbers have declined in recent years, few elephants are taken from the wild. Instead of catching wild elephants, MTE managers are working on better ways to breed their own replacement timber elephants. By the time it is 6 months old, a calf born in a logging camp is given an identification number, which is sometimes tattooed on its rump. When the number is assigned, a record book is started. The book will follow the elephant wherever it goes, and every significant event in the elephant's life from birth to its death will be recorded. Until it is 4 or 5 years old, the baby elephant remains with its mother, even while she works in the forest dragging heavy logs. This stage of life is called calf at heel. During this time, no active training is done, but the calf still learns many things. Baby elephants are intelligent, curious, and mischievous. It's very true. Like human children, they spend many years learning what it takes to become an adult member of their society. One way a baby elephant learns is by observing and copying what its mother does. Calves also learn by playing with other young elephants. They wrestle and chase one another, learning how to assert themselves and gain status within the herd. So cute. Let's look at this picture we're going to talk about first. At the age of 4 or 5, the calf is separated from its mother. A 5-year-old elephant weighs at least 1,000 pounds, as much as an adult horse. It is old enough and large enough to begin its training to become a timber elephant. Young elephants do not know their own strength. So for the first few weeks of training, they are securely tied into a log chute called a crush. This prevents young elephants from injuring themselves or their trainers. The Oozies stay with the youngsters around the clock during this period. They even sing to them to keep them company. After a few days in the chute, the young elephants settle down and begin to learn. As soon as the young elephant accepts its trainers, it's taken down to the river for a bath. This is done by enlisting the aid of special elephants called kungies. The young elephant is tied to 1 or 2 of these gentle but firm kungies. If it tries to resist or break away, the kungi corrects the calf. It's the kungi's job to let the young elephant know that it must obey the rules. Very few elephants become kungis, as it takes a rare mix of tolerance and intelligence. The kungis are highly valued for these special qualities. The lessons proceed rapidly, and the young elephant soon learns the commands to lift its feet and to accept an Oozie sitting on its back. Like children, elephants learn at different rates. The training is adapted to suit the learning pace of each calf. After 3 or 4 weeks, most calves have a young Oozie assigned to work with them and have learned the following basic commands. Mit, or mek, lie down on your belly. Lut, stand up. La, come here. Ha, stay still and be calm. Ya, stay calm and don't move your ear, leg, foot, trunk, tail, head, and so on. 8, lay down on your side, sleep. Play, rest on your side. Mine, pick up your front leg so that I may use it as a step to get up on your back. Yot, stop. Tet, go forward or go away. Kaut, pick up that object and lift it up to me. Tetu, put your legs into that fetter. When its initial training is completed, the young elephant becomes a baggage elephant. It will remain a baggage elephant until it is large enough to do timber work, usually at about age 18. Baggage elephants are usually kept tethered in special areas outside the Oozies' permanent rest camps. Unlike trained timber elephants, they haven't yet learned to stay near camp. They are only set free in the forest when their Oozies are present to keep an eye on them. The baggage elephant's job is to carry light loads of supplies from the permanent rest camps to the timber elephant units working in the deep forests. They are also used during the monsoon season to bring supplies from town when the roads are impassable to other transport. When the baggage elephant reaches the age of 15, it is sent to a logging camp with the timber elephants, to complete its training. At the camp, the elephant practices by moving lightweight logs. Doing this light work builds up the muscles it will need to become a full-fledged timber elephant. Timber work is complicated, and the elephant must learn many new commands. Among these are Ton, push that log or rock or elephant forward. Ong, roll the log with your tusk or trunk. Yawn, or swale, pull the log. Ma, pick up the log on your tusks. Pint, lift the log with your trunk. Fail, push those branches out of the way. When the elephant has learned all of the commands, it is ready to become a timber elephant. The elephant knows what to do and when to do it, sometimes even before the Oozie asks. Man and elephant work smoothly together as a team, moving logs without wasted effort. When the elephant is 18, a veterinarian examines it and decides whether it's fit enough to become a full-time timber elephant. At this stage, a fit elephant is capable of pulling logs weighing 1 ton or less. Such elephants are known as third-class timber elephants. Over a period of years, as the elephant becomes stronger, it can move up in class. A second-class elephant is capable of pulling logs weighing up to 2 tons. A first-class ranking is reserved for large bull elephants that can pull logs weighing more than 2 tons, or 4,000 pounds. An average-size Asian elephant weighs about 7,000 pounds and stands about 8 feet tall. A very large bull weighs as much as 15,000 pounds and stands up to 10 feet tall. Between the ages of 25 and 45, the timber elephant is at peak physical condition. After age 45, the timber elephant begins to decline physically. Because of this, the elephant is usually put into light baggage service until it is retired or dies of old age. The Oozies of Myanmar. It's dawn deep in the Myanmar Forest, and Wanlin is awake. Just as he and his grandfather had hoped, he has become an Oozie. He rolls up his sleeping mat, buttons his shirt, knots his colorful longji around his waist, and steps into his rubber thongs. He joins the other Oozies near the warmth of the hardwood fire. They wait for the water to boil so they can prepare green tea, which they drink from bamboo cups. Their leader, the Singong, brings over an aluminum pot, and they share a simple breakfast of rice, curry, and vegetables left over from the night before. As they eat, they joke with each other and discuss the day's work. After breakfast, each Oozie straps on a long, heavy knife or daw and sets out into the forest to find his elephant. Oozies use the broad-bladed daw to cut away branches and creepers while they are on their elephants' backs. They also use the daw to carve elephant bells, cut bamboo to build huts, and at times to control dangerous elephants. Wanlin heads for the shallow river near their camp. He looks up at the sky. The monsoon season will start soon. Weeks of steady rains will swell this calm river into a roaring torrent. Before them, tons of timber must be moved to the riverbed so that it will be ready to be carried downstream. As he wades across the river, Wanlin spots an iridescent blue kingfisher swooping down and spearing a small fish for breakfast. In the distance, he hears an alarmed grunt of a sambar deer. Perhaps the deer has scented a leopard. The night before, Wanlin and the other Oozies heard the rasping call of a leopard not far from camp. There we go. He's got beanbags in his butt. Wanlin climbs up through the brush to the opposite bank and begins looking for the tracks of his timber elephant, Tolai. Tolai is now 30 years old. He and Wanlin have been partners for more than 20 years. There we go. Topple. Wanlin knows the shape and size of Tolai's footprints, and it takes only a moment to find his elephant's trail. Along the trail, Wanlin finds a massive imprint in the wet grass where Tolai lay down to rest for a while. Farther down the trail, he finds a lush strand of spiky bamboo, which Tolai ripped into and ate. By looking at these signs, Wanlin knows how Tolai spent his night in the forest. After following the meandering trail for 3 miles, Wanlin hears the faint but distant sound of Tolai's bell. All timber elephants wear large wooden bells around their necks. Oozies carve the bells out of teak and fasten wooden clampers on the bell sides. Each bell has a unique sound which an Oozie can pick out from half a mile away. To Oozies, the bells sound like forest birds, which they believe is soothing to their elephants. You should watch the video I'm linking because the sound of the bells really is soothing, honestly. A few minutes later, Wanlin sees his giant gray partner. The tusker is below him on the hillside, pulling up clumps of grass. Wanlin watches as Tolai shakes the excess dirt off the tangled roots and delicately stuffs the grass into his mouth. Standing quietly, Wanlin takes a moment to enjoy the view. The misty forest surrounding them is filled with thick strands of rustling bamboo. There are also bamboo, nabe, tame, and tiao trees, and dozens of century-old hardwood trees with names like parak, pingado, kuri, teak. After a few minutes, he calls his elephant, la, la, la. Tolai fans out its big ears and looks up the hill toward his Oozie. He pulls up another clump of grass and puts it into his mouth. This is Tolai, by the way. The actual Tolai. La, la, la. Somewhat reluctantly, Tolai leaves his patch of grass and makes his way up the steep hill toward Wanlin. It's time to go to work in the forest. When Tolai reaches him, Wanlin squats and unhooks the chain, fetters wrapped around both of Tolai's front legs. Timber elephants are hobbled like this so they don't wander too far from camp. Despite the fetters, some elephants manage to travel as far as 10 miles before the night is over. Wanlin is pleased that Tolai is only 3 miles away this morning. With the fetter off one ankle, Wanlin throws an extra chain over the top of Tolai's back. Mit, Wanlin commands while touching Tolai as far up on his back as he can reach. The bull slowly lowers himself to his belly and stretches out on the ground. Splash. Wanlin cuts a leafy branch off a nearby bush and uses it to sweep away the dirt on Tolai's neck and head. "You are a very dirty elephant," he tells Tolai. Tolai responds with some deep chirping sounds, and Wanlin pats him on the shoulder. He goes, "Brr, brr." I make this sound, but it's way too loud. Brr, brr. Using Tolai's outstretched front legs as a step, Wanlin climbs up onto the elephant's head and sits with one foot behind each warm, leathery ear. "Lut," he says. Tolai gets to his feet, and Wanlin prods him behind the ears with his toes. Tolai heads back toward camp. Before they reach camp, Wanlin and Tolai stop at a pool in the river. A few of the other Oozies have already found their elephants and are vigorously scrubbing them down. Wanlin guides Tolai to the pool. "Mit," he commands, and the big elephant lies down. Wanlin stands on Tolai's back and hitches his lungi up so it won't get wet while he works. He then steps down into the river and begins scooping up water and splashing it onto his elephant. Timber elephants are bathed every morning. Getting washed. To prevent chafing, the gritty dirt must be washed off the elephant's skin before the Oozie puts on the dragging gear. Tolai's slate gray skin glistens in the early morning sun as Wanlin scrubs them. Wanlin uses soap made from the crushed fiber of the suyat vine. To clean Tolai's ivory white tusks, he uses river sand. When every inch of Tolai's hide is clean, Wanlin climbs back up on his elephant's head. "Let," he commands. Tolai surges up out of the water and they head toward camp. Wanlin stops his elephant just outside the camp near the rack where the dragon gear hangs. He pulls down several mats of soft padding called teye and lays it on Tolai's back. The padding is made from the bark of the bamboo tree. Next comes the saddle, or ondong, which he puts on top of the padding. You can see the saddle. Over the top of this and running under the elephant's chest, Wanlin straps on the girth band, or koksego. He then secures the crupper rope beneath Tolai's tail. The girth band and crupper rope hold the saddle in place. Wanlin then ties the breast band, or laipod, across the front of Tolai's chest. The breast band has loops woven on either end that hold the drag chains, or yelong, used to pull the heavy timber along the ground. Finally, to prevent chafing, Wanlin dobs a generous portion of lard underneath the girth and breast bands. Now the Oozie and the elephant are ready to work. So sweet. How cute, how cute. I love elephants, if you can't tell. They're so sweet. Basic elephant working unit is made up of 6 elephants and 6 Oozies. Each unit also has 3 assistants called pajiks, and 3 laborers to assist the Oozies. The pajiks and laborers' jobs are to limb trees, cut holes in the logs with the drag chains, and attach the chains to the logs. Each working unit is supervised by a singong and an assistant singong. The working season lasts 8 months, from June to the middle of February. During this time, the Oozies leave the semi-permanent rest camps where their families live year-round and take their elephants deep into the forests. They set up temporary camps living in rough bamboo shelters. During the working season, they don't see their families for weeks or sometimes months at a time. During Myanmar's dry season, from mid-February through April, it's simply too hot for the elephants and Oozies to work in the forests. Instead, they return with their elephants to the rest camps. Oozies and their families live simple but hard lives deep in the forests. Their jungle homes are built on stilts. The walls are made of bamboo poles and woven mats. The roofs are thatched with palm leaves. They cook their meals of rice, curry, and vegetables over charcoal fires. There is no indoor plumbing, and they wash their clothes and bathe in the river. Both men and women wear longis, tubes of colorful cotton cloth knotted at the waist. This simple dress has many advantages. It's cool during the heat of the day, it can be washed and dried in a matter of minutes, and it's inexpensive. Oozies make 1,000 chots a month. This is equivalent to about $10. In addition to paying this basic wage, the government provides each Oozie and his family with a monthly ration of rice. The Oozies and their families make use of the forest for such things as food and building materials. What they can't find in the forest, they raise themselves. In season, they plant gardens for fresh vegetables. Many families keep pigs or chickens. Pigs wander around the village freely, taking refuge underneath the huts when it gets too hot. Chickens scratch and peck around the village during the day and roost in the forest at night. There are some items the forest doesn't provide, such as cloth, rubber, thongs, and mosquito netting. For these things, the Oozies and their families have to go to the nearest town, which sometimes involves a round trip of more than 100 miles. There are no cars in the timber camp. To get to town, the Oozies hitch rides on logging trucks or ox carts, ride bicycles, or simply walk. During the monsoon season, the dusty roads turn into mud, and sometimes the only way to the nearest town is by elephant. This elephant is pregnant. They gestate for 22 months, can you imagine? Living in the forest presents other challenges to the Oozie and his family. Venomous snakes and biting insects are always a concern. Relentless rain pelts the village in the monsoon season. During the dry season, the fierce intensity of the sun can cause heat stroke. Sorry for my chair. And if an Oozie or one of the members of his family becomes ill, medicine and doctors are many hours away. Despite the difficulties and challenges of forest living, most Oozies wouldn't trade lives with anyone. They love being in the forest with their elephants. Sign me up, honestly. Look how sweet. Come on over. There we go. Women sometimes help their Oozie husbands with the feeding and care of the elephants, but in Myanmar, only males are allowed to become Oozies. At an early age, boys began following their fathers into the forest to retrieve their elephants. By the time they are 8 or 9, these boys know most of the basic commands Oozies use and how to tie fetters around an elephant's ankles. When their fathers are away from the village working in the forest, young boys spend as much time as possible watching older boys working the baggage elephants. The Oozie skill with elephants is passed down from generation to generation. By the time an Oozie's son is 12 years old, there's a good chance that he has become a wage-earning Oozie himself. The Singong matches the boy with a young baggage elephant, and they train together for several years before going into the forest to work. It's not unusual for an Oozie to spend his entire working life with the same elephant. Oozies can retire at half pay when they are 60 years old. The retired Oozie stays in the rest camp during the working season. He spends his time playing with his grandchildren and visiting the baggage elephant camp, where he teaches young Oozies the art of working with elephants. In the forest with the elephants. At noon, Wanlin guides Tolai up to the harness rack and takes off the dragging gear. In 6 hours, they have moved 2 large teak logs to the river, a good day's work. After the gear is hung up, Wanlin rides Tolai a mile into the forest and fetters his front legs. You'll be able to fill your belly from here, he tells Tolai. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Don't wander too far away. When Wanlin returns to camp, the Singong gives him his next day's assignment. Wanlin, the Singong says, tomorrow you and Tolai will start dragging that monster of a teak on the north hillside. They cut it down this morning and sectioned it into 4 logs. Wanlin knows this tree well, and he's not surprised that it's been assigned to Tolai. His elephant is a first-class elephant, capable of pulling more than 4,000 pounds. Tolai is also a kungi, the most intelligent and reliable elephant in the timber unit. I'd better take a look, Wanlin says. The 200-year-old teak is on a steep hillside near a dangerous cliff. It was selected for harvesting 3 years earlier. At that time, the forest manager and his helpers girdled the tree. They cut away a strip of bark all around the thick trunk. Without his bark, the tree died. The hardwood has been drying since that day. The wood from this tree is destined for a deck of a large ocean liner being built in Hong Kong. Wanlin doesn't know this, though. He only knows that he and Tolai have to get the logs from this huge tree away from the cliff. Down the steep slope, then to the river 2 miles away. Topples, scratchy sounds. Topples' ears. Good sounds, Topple. Wanlin arrives at the spot and clambers through the thick underbrush up the steep hillside to the fallen tree. The 4 teak logs are perilously close to the edge of the cliff. He guesses that each section weighs well over 3,000 pounds. If he isn't careful when he begins to drag, he'll lose a log over the cliff. Worse yet, a shifting log could drag both him and Tolai over the edge. There's a big log down here. Big pull. Wanlin walks around each log, calculating the best way to start the pull. With this information, he determines which log should be hauled first. His final task is to pick the best drag path away from the cliff to the river. By the time he finishes, it's getting dark. He walks back to camp, listening to the distant hollow tok 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 of elephant bells in the forest. Tok 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 tok. Later that evening, as Wanlin lies on a sleeping mat, he thinks about the next day's work. He recalls all the tricks his father and grandfather taught him about moving such difficult logs. He and Tolai have handled big logs in tough spots many times before, but these 4 logs will be especially tricky because of the cliff. He hopes Tolai is resting well. His elephant will need all of his strength for the dangerous work ahead. Nearly half of Myanmar is still forested. This cover is by far the densest in Southeast Asia. One reason Myanmar's forests are still vast and green is that much of the logging is done by elephants. Another reason is that the foresters use a system of harvesting trees called the selective tender system. Only teak trees that are at least 80 to 100 years old are chosen for cutting in Myanmar. Before a tree is harvested, it must be at least 7.5 feet around at the height of a man's chest. In a 30-acre area, the MTE might cut down just one mature tree every 10 years. To assure there will be teak trees for future generations, foresters replant 30,000 acres of teak every year. The selective tender system has been used in Myanmar since 1856. Before a teak tree is cut down, it is first girdled and left to stand for 3 years. This is so the wood can dry out, which makes it lighter for transport. After a tree is cut down, its limbs are trimmed away. Depending on its size, it is cut into 3 or 4 logs. It's now up to the paycheck to get the logs ready for dragging. The first thing he does is to round off the lead end of the log. This is called snouting. It makes it easier for the elephant to drag the log along the ground. With the log snouted, he then chops a hole called a nefa, or ear hole, in one end of the log. The elephant's work is called stumping or extraction. This means moving the log from the stump to the collection point. The collection point is either a riverbed, where logs can be rafted to a sawmill, or the nearest road, where logs can be loaded on trucks. Not all timber elephants are required to do the same amount of work. As they work, the Oozie keeps in mind each elephant's class and conditioning, the weight of the logs being pulled, the difficulty of the terrain, and the season. They let their elephants rest as needed. Still, timber elephants work hard. During the 8-month working season, they tend to lose weight, sometimes as much as 1,000 pounds. To preserve the elephant's strength, the Oozies usually end the workday by 11 a.m. The elephants get 3-day weekends and several one-day holidays each month. They also get a long vacation, which allows them to fully recover after a strenuous working season. The fact that elephants don't need roads to get to the trees is good for the environment. Without roads, few people can get into the forests and damage them. This keeps people who practice shifting or slash and burn cultivation from burning the forests. The modern mechanical substitutes for elephants are called log skidders. These machines move on heavy steel tracks, causing tremendous damage to the forest. The petroleum fumes these machines spew pollute the air. Logging by elephants is better for the environment. Their feet don't destroy the forest, and they use green fuel, which doesn't pollute the air. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. I'm having too much fun this video. Can you tell that I love elephants? Yes. The next day, Wanlin and Tolai make their way carefully up the narrow, twisting path that leads to the fallen fallen teak. Other Oozies follow behind on 2 good-sized tuskers. When the group arrives, Wanlin guides Tolai to the edge of the cliff. He feels Tolai tighten up beneath him. "Watch out, old fellow," he says. "We don't want to end up down there today." The first log Wanlin wants to move is the smallest and farthest up the slope. He tells the other Oozies that their elephants will need to brace the log to prevent it from rolling while the page gets the chain set. The 2 Oozies move their elephants into position. They give the command to their elephants bend forward, holding the log in place with the base of their trunks and the tip of their tusks. With the log securely braced, the page runs Tolai's drag chains through the net to hold the teak log. The log is ready to be pulled. Wanlin knows they must drag the log at just the right pace. If Tolai pulls it too slowly, the log might roll downhill. Too fast, and the log might slide straight down into Tolai's rear legs. Once they get past the sloped area, they'll be safe. Quit that big pulling, boy. He's pulling hard. Good boy. Wanlin gives Tolai a little pep talk before beginning, then shouts, "Yon." Tolai bellows as the chain pulls tight. The Kungi elephant knows there's danger for him in this place. He's been dragged backward more than once by a runaway log on a steep slope. "Yon." Tolai pulls and strains, slipping to his knees under the heavy burden. The log shifts downward slightly, but the 2 tuskers keep it steady. When Tolai feels the log begin to move, he leans into his breastband, doubling his effort. As the log picks up speed, the strain lessens. "Yon," Wanlin shouts. "Yon." Tolai lunges ahead. Wanlin, the page and the other Oozies watch the log for the first hint of sideways rolling, but there is none. Within a few minutes, Tolai has dragged the heavy log out of immediate danger and reaches the top of the slope. All smiles, Wanlin and the page congratulate each other and give Tolai a well-earned rest. When Tolai's breathing returns to normal, they continue the drag. They make slow but steady progress, moving down the steep, twisting path toward the riverbed. At each switchback, they have to unhook the drag chains and reposition the massive log. The 2 other elephants help hold the log in place while Tolai's chains are reattached. When they get close to the river, they unhook Tolai from the log and let him push it over the edge of the steep bank. The log crashes into the riverbed and lands nose first in the soft sand. It's noon and their workday is done. Back at the camp, the 3 elephants are each fed a bucket of paddy rice, then taken into the forest and set free. Tomorrow they will pull the 2nd log to the riverbed, and the next day another. There the logs will lie until the monsoon rains come. Partners in conflict. Singon hands Wanlin an urgent message from the MTE headquarters. "Take your Kungi Tolai to Mabala village immediately. Assist in the capture of 6 wild elephants." "The village of Mabala is over 100 miles away," Wanlin comments. "I know," the Singon says. "A truck is waiting for you in Tolai at Baguyoma Road. If you leave early tomorrow morning, you'll get there by noon and be at Mabala in 3 days or so." That evening, Wanlin finds out more about the elephants he and Tolai are supposed to help capture. About a month earlier, a wild elephant herd had shown up outside Mabala. Wild elephant herd. They raided the villagers' rice and vegetable crops. Having enjoyed the feast, they kept coming back for more. The loss of the precious food was serious enough, but one night when a man and his son tried to drive the elephants away, the excited elephants turned on them and chased them all the way back to their hut. Then, instead of stopping, the elephants tore the hut apart and trampled the man and boy. When informed of this tragedy, the government made the decision to capture the marauding elephants. 3.5 days after receiving the message, Wanlin and Tolai arrive at Mabala. 2 other Oozies and their big bull elephants have also been recruited from the forest to assist in the capture. That night, when the small elephant herd arrives to feed on the villagers' crops, they are met with a surprise. Before they sense that anything is wrong, firecrackers erupt in the darkness, and they are confronted by shouting people carrying The wild elephants turn in panic and run from the fire and noise. As they flee, more fires are lit on both sides of them, and the awful ruckus intensifies. To the east, all is dark and calm, and that's where the elephants seek refuge. After 2 miles of swift flight, they sense the thick tree trunks closing in on them from both sides. Directly in their path is a gap in the narrowing walls. The lead elephant, an old cow, runs right through it. Immediately the gap closes and she is trapped. This method of catching wild elephants has been used many times before. The marauding elephants are driven by shouting men and fired to the funnel made out of logs. There's my loud cat again. I'm sorry, he's hungry. When the elephants are in the trap, a heavy gate slams shut behind them. This capture method does not always work, but this night it succeeds very well. The entire herd of 6 elephants is trapped inside the solid stockade of lashed tree trunks called a keta. Just what this is. Cute. The keta is 8 feet high and nearly a mile around. The wild elephants make several attempts to smash their way out, but they are met by shouting men with orange-flamed torches, and they lose their nerve. During the next 2 weeks, Wanlin and the other 2 Oozies skillfully use their kungi elephants to catch 4 of the 6 wild elephants. They ride into the stockade with extra men on the kungi's back, then slip loops of thick rope around the wild elephant's legs and their necks. 2 kungis wedge each captured elephant between them, pushing and dragging the animal out of the stockade. These elephants will be trained, and eventually they will become timber elephants. The last 2 elephants, an old cow and her 2-year-old calf, are given a powerful drug by a veterinarian. He shoots the drug into them with a dart rifle from a safe distance. When the 2 elephants are sedated, they are dragged and pushed by Tolai and the other kungis into a large truck. The next morning, both elephants are taken to a forest 50 miles away and released. They'll soon find other wild elephants and join a new herd. Okay. Wanlin and Tolai stay at Mabala for several weeks to help train the wild elephants. At night, Tolai is tied to a tree. The forest near the village has been cut down, and there's no place for him to forage. Instead, Wanlin is to bring food to him. Tolai's weight is dropped during their stay at the village. Wanlin is concerned. The monsoon season's well underway, and food for Tolai becomes even more difficult to gather. The rains are swelling the rivers now. This means Wanlin's elephant unit has to work twice as hard to take advantage of the flow. Wanlin is eager to return to get back to the Lungi camp and help his friends. Finally, Wanlin is given permission to leave Mabala and return to the forest. The trip back is difficult. The rains have turned the dusty roads into quagmires. Tolai is offloaded a half-dozen times to push or pull the truck they are traveling in out of the mud. It takes them a week to get to the Baguiomo road. They arrive in the evening, and it's too late to head into the forest. Wanlin ties Tolai to a tree and gathers food for him to eat. The cold rain hammers them without letting up. Wanlin builds a small fire and huddles near it. Tomorrow, he tells Tolai, you'll be in the forest, filling your belly, and I'll be back with my friends. All we have to do is find a good place to cross the river. Early the next morning, they reach the roaring river. Logs from the timber camps rush past on their way to the sawmill. It takes them all day to find a river crossing. Wanlin urges Tolai forward, and quickly the elephant is neck deep in the cool water. When they are halfway across, the rain lets up for a moment. The sun comes out from behind the clouds. On the other side of the river is the deep forest. They are almost home. That's the end of the book. I don't know why my computer started whirring just now, but it's at the end anyway. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed. I love this book. I love to watch the timber elephants again. Check the video. It's so cool. It's such a neat thing. Okay, my computer's really whirring, so I'll let it figure out what it wants. It's probably updating something, but I hope you relaxed and enjoyed the video and learned something cool about elephants. Have a good night. Do you want to hear Topple's ears again? Listen. too intense for the end of the video. Maybe Topple will just have his own video one day. What do you say,